Okay, hello everyone. This is our, I guess it's our last weekly sync for the package team in September. And I will kick off with, let me just make sure I've got this right. Cool. Upcoming vacation, we have John and Steve. John is October 3rd and 4th, and Steve is October 10 through 17. And I have the first item. There's an effort to introduce code review efficiency. I've included an MR in the document if peeps want to go in and take a look at, go and have a look at that MR. Just some ideas. I had some other ideas as well, just the idea of like, as our team starts to grow and people get a bit more experience, we'll be able to sort of start doing code reviews for each other, which is quite helpful. But please take a look at that. I think Steve, you're up next.
Yeah, and this is to follow up your comments from last week about the chats about having availability taking precedence over velocity, availability and security, I guess. And there was a merge request to the handbook that went through this last week that kind of details those changes. So it's worth taking a look at.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a cultural effort that Eric is driving around just some of our security and availability concerns as we sort of, try to become more of an enterprise-ready product. And if you go to, I think it's last week's package sync, I put a link to the MR, and I might have it in that MR, but it's a link. Eric has a link to the document that where he spelt out all of that stuff. So if you're curious about it, go check that document. There's a heap of information there. So I've put a little note here about a couple of issues that we created in our team project. Team issues address stand-up improvements. I've closed that. I've actually, if you notice the stand-up this morning, if you've reached that time of the day, wherever you scheduled your stand-up, I've removed the sort of more weekly based, excuse me, the more weekly based questions that were in that stand-up, which felt kind of weird, like what's something interesting I've learned this week, that type of thing. Those have moved to a Friday sort of week in review / retro type model. And that will only get pinged on Friday. And then the other questions are staying daily. I've also, just to be clear, removed John. John has a whole heap of different teams that he's working with. So having pings for stand-ups all the time for different teams, I've just been getting mine blown away. So I can't even answer them because the next one comes in and then you can't answer it. And it feels like you're in meetings and then you can't answer it. It's like, oh, anyway. So, and the new issues created in that team project are regular bug estimation, which I sort of floated last week, I think. But it's the idea of, rather than sort of waiting until a bug ends up in one of our milestones, to actually go and regularly just go and get through those bugs and trying to get them estimated sooner rather than later. Because we're not sure what will come up. Something could be escalated, and it's nice to have those sorts of things figured out. Team demos is something else. Tim had created an issue quite a while ago, issue 5, and no one responded. And it's not because we don't love you, Tim, because we do. Yeah, nothing actually got done with that. So I've created a new issue, issue 9. You can see that's linked in the document. People want to take a look at that, please. Any feedback if people don't feel like it's useful. I know there are different purposes we might have demos. One of them might be for product purposes. One of them might be demonstrating other competitor products, those types of things. All of these things can be valuable, but whether they're actually actively things we want to invest our energy in is another matter. I will read Gigi's because we've got a cold. Obviously, I'm going to talk a heap. Gigi says, I'm going to try not to cough in the mic, sorry. Gigi says to beware of confidential issues. That he made the mistake of opening a public MR for a confidential issue. Perhaps confidential issues should have a better visual indication that they are confidential instead of just a note on the sidebar. I'm sure this is linked somewhere in the handbook or the docs in the onboarding, but maybe this could be more explicit in the onboarding process. I saw he pinged me on the conversation he was having in the backend channel on this, and so there's actually stuff in the handbook, and I think he's linked there. I think it's a good suggestion, but does feel like it's something that's sort of covered, maybe not in enough, with enough priority, perhaps. I can add this to onboarding. Oh, I do have another issue I should have added. For the new developers, pretty much all of us, question mark. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and read the previous link and save yourself from the mistake I did. Security team has already been actioned and removed the MR. Also, the issue is not that serious to begin with, so not to worry so much. So thanks, Gigi, for calling that out. That's good. Good thing to learn there. And the one other thing I just want to remind everyone, tomorrow we have a new member joining our team, which is very exciting, a backend engineer. His name is David, more of the Ian Nico time zone. So he'll have a friend. I've let David know, another friend, I should say. I've let David know that both of you are in approximately around David's time zone. Whereas David's onboarding buddy, you're all like, you should be online about when David is. So, and that's all I have. And it looks like that's all that's on the list. Does anyone have any of that I'd like to discuss?
Just to add to Gigi's comment, so like I followed that thread in the backend channel as well, and I guess like the conclusion was that for a confidential issue, you should open the MR on dev.gitlab.org, I think is the site. And yeah, I didn't realize that either. I did not know what dev.gitlab.org was really for. So that's very good to know.
Nice. Well, that's a good thing to learn right there. Let's see. Does anyone have any other questions about that? Cool. Go, Nick.
I've got a question. It's not about that though. It's about a little bit further up. So the regular bug estimation board that you put together, I took a look at that, and the majority of the bugs that I could see in there were basically back-end bugs. And I was wondering how would you like front end to contribute to the estimation process there?
Well, I think like even our regular issues that maybe span across both front end and back end, just sort of take a quick look and evaluate whether there's any front end effort required. Now, it might just be a function of having two very senior front end engineers on our team already who are smashing through bugs and getting everything fixed really quick. But if not, like as bugs come up, if they're in our section, you can see it in package bugs. So you can actually go look at it. If there's anything that's not estimated in there, I'm really thinking like time boxing was kind of the idea I started out with, just to set aside an hour a week or 2 hours or whatever it is to like go through several of the bugs. And once that time box is up, just move on to the next thing. And I would suggest going in priority order, but that's why I started the issue to chat about it. So if you have concerns about, well, how much of these are front end, if it's not tagged with front end, maybe don't prioritize it, start with a high priority. It's not tagged with front end, look for something that is. And then I would sort of expect things that aren't tagged front end that are actually related to the front end, or where the backend engineers have questions about it that relate to front end effort, then perhaps they can ping you in that or tag it with front end, and then you sort of have a better idea. My sense here, the basic thought I had was we have SLOs on all of these bugs. So some of these are really old. So like 1,000 days old, you're kind of like, okay, it can't be a huge priority, although maybe it is for the person that raised it, right? If they're still like running into the problem, it's probably triply annoying at this point. But we do have SLOs on all of these bugs, and the SLOs means that, say 90 days are up, we might have to actually try to solve that bug for that time. And so if it's not estimated, we don't even know how and when we should start that work. So it could be just a really small thing. Say it's just a really simple visual bug, like 2% signs in a settings page, which I still haven't fixed, but it's still a problem. That will take you 12 seconds to solve and you'll be done with it. Obviously that's, a 1 or whatever. But you could also find a bug that was like pretty complex and might take you, a week's worth of effort to get done. So having that ahead of time means that we're ahead of the SLO coming up. And then we can prioritize it accordingly is kind of my thought process. Happy to discuss. That's why there's an issue.
And as part of the estimation, does that include maybe asking clarifying questions. Like if the person didn't include enough details, you can add a comment that says like, hey, what do you mean by this? Or could you send over more stuff? Or, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be helpful because I've seen a lot of bugs that come through that are really just someone trying to work out how to fix it. That they're not really bugs. So I just want to make sure we're not just looking at those and like estimating them versus commenting to the user.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. I think it should be sort of, I think of it as a normal estimation process. So, you know, when we have a feature, an issue for a new feature, and someone comes and looks at it and has questions, that's where they put the questions, right? So that to me feels like the same type of thing. And with the much, much older issues that we have or bugs that we have open already, as Tim, you and I had sort of already been doing, going in there and just sort of following up with the person that raised it or a person that has shown interest to say, is this still a problem in the latest release? Are you still experiencing this issue? And if they're not, then, you know, maybe we don't prioritize it. They're already well past the SLO. In fact, some of those bugs that we have they predate SLOs. So I think they're probably past their SLO before the SLO started. So you kind of go like, okay, well, we're a small team still. It's hard to prioritize that sort of stuff. But again, that issue is really supposed to discuss it. I don't want to necessarily make it all my idea of how we ought to handle it. I'm happy to come up with something and just start with that. But as you all know, you know, I'm definitely a huge advocate if we have a better idea. It doesn't have to be mine or anyone else's. Let's just find a good way to handle it. The core issue is just like coming up with bugs and sort of going, oh, well, how much is this? What is this effort when we want to put bugs into a milestone or when an SLO is coming up, just under having a sense of where it's at without, you know, scrambling to deal with it. Yeah. Anything else anyone wants to discuss?
Yeah, I have a question about, so sometimes we may start an MR and label it front end, and look like there is a backend part, tiny part, and then you dig in and it's not small. It's completely fine that we go in and ask for help from some backend dev and just do it. I was just wondering if there is a level where we draw a line and say, I'm not effective here. It's better if I throw this MR back to a backend engineer. He can do it in half of the time that they can use, or it's better just to spear through?
Yeah, I think what we'd been trying to do was sort of try to figure that out at the outset when we're prioritizing, when we're weighting the issues. That was one of, if I remember correctly, one of the reasons we wanted to do weighting ahead of a milestone kickoff. Because if you're looking through and you see some sense that there's a back end component for your work, or same is true for someone on the back end finding some front end component for an issue that they need to work on, asking a back end engineer or front end engineer respectively to take a look at that issue and estimate it means that we should be a little bit sort of inoculated against the potential of having big surprises like that, but it's always possible. When that comes up, I think probably if you identify, excuse me, sorry. Probably if you identify that this is actually a heap of work and will really affect deliverables, then that's when we need to sort of escalate that to Tim and myself so that we can make a decision about whether it still goes in, something else needs to come out, like that sort of thing will happen. I think it will happen less as we get a bit more experience estimating the work and have a bit more understanding around how all the pieces fit together. But it's okay. It's like, we're not doing super heavy estimations because we want to minimize the amount of time. I want to minimize the amount of time that people spend estimating. And I want to minimize context switching for people where you're spending hours at a time trying to like figure out exactly what's required. And then you drop it and come back to it 2 weeks later and you've got to get all that context again. That's why I'm trying to keep the estimation effort pretty minimal. And so that's why I've sort of challenged everyone to say, hey, can you estimate this in every issue in 10 minutes or 2 minutes? Like, spend that amount of time, because unless we're seeing something on the other side where we're seing a large percentage of missed deliverables based on an unexpectedly large amount of work for an issue, I just don't see the value in investing in a heavy estimation process. Does that make sense? I know you just sort of started, so some people here already have some context around this, but maybe that wasn't clear from the issue.
Okay, makes sense.
Cool. questions, or anyone else wants to chat about anything in particular? It's nice to see both Laurie and Sarah here. Welcome. We haven't had any of our other stable counterparts join many of these meetings, and we're always very excited to see people join. And I apologize for my goofy voice.
I'm happy to be able to join it finally. Like, I've been having a hard time in California, but now I'm on. It's almost 4 p.m. here in Morocco, so it makes it a lot easier, and it's a lot more fun than reading.
Nice.
I like that you laugh and mute. You can imagine the laughter.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm happy to join in and hear what you guys are up to. Ian and I and Tim have been working on some research stuff, but it's always nice to hear the other thought processes around some of the requests and to see how I might be able to help out as well. So I will be here as many times as I can.
Did you get added to the invite, Laurie? Would you like to be added?
I think Valerie added me. I think she forwarded it to me, so I think I'm good.
Nice.
If it falls off my calendar, I'll find you. Google.
Well, we have all of my meetings that I set up are editable by attendees. So like you know, anyone here can add you. So I have no problem with people showing up. We're always grateful for whatever support we could get from people. So, you know, I don't want to speak for everyone, but thank you very much. Cool. Anyone else have anything they'd like to bring up? Awkward silence. Success. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and I hope you all had a wonderful weekend, and let's look forward to an awesome week. Bye.